Welcome to the Canadian Superbike Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Superbike Podcast. Apologies for the delay. It's been a hell of a year. I'll let you know about it in the book one day. Colin Fraser on the other side, Marshall Ferguson here as well for you as we are recapping all things from the fourth and final round of Bridgestone CSBK in 2025 and touching on a variety of other subjects as well, which we are recording this on Friday, October 3rd. And my opening question, as usual, totally off topic to Colin Fraser, is what the hell's going on with Mark? Did he just win the title and forget how to ride a bike, or what is this?
Well, the joke always with him over history, because he's won, well, depending on how you want to look at it, I feel he's won 9 world championships, but Dorna, and I believe this is in a bid to please Liberty, who own F1, F1 don't place as much value on support class championships as motorcycle racing typically does. So they view it as his 7th championship. But anyway, when he wins, normally he starts falling down. I don't think it's any big thing, and Mark falls more than anybody else. And that's a testament to a lot of things, including most of these circuits have a lot of runoff, although this track this weekend is not the best for runoff because it's a street circuit. But having said that, I think he relaxes a little bit, and that I'm suspicious when you're Marc Marquez, you probably shouldn't relax. And circling around on this, if you watched any of Japan last weekend, he was much less relaxed than usual. He wasn't his normal Mark. Now, how he rode and the decisions he made and all that stuff were right up at the standard we've come to expect from him. But I don't think he's forgotten how to ride. However, I will credit the video crew because that's some of the best crash footage I've ever seen today.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. I have to admit as well, when he threw up the 9, as soon as he pulled in, I was like, oh no, like did he miscount his own championship? And then they're like, no, like the support class stuff and all the rest. So it's a shame that they don't kind of acknowledge a championship is a championship is a championship in that sense, because I do think that there's added value to that. But when you talk about, him being tight in Japan and Motegi and all the rest, the sports psychology of being in that spot, you can say, I'm as relaxed as can be. I'm going to ride the bike the same way. I'm locked in. I'm focused. But then they get on the bike, and sometimes I'm sure you, especially Colin, can just see like, oh no, this is, and it's not like he's changed his riding style or something, or he's over riding like Quadraro's been the whole year because he has no choice. But you could obviously see that Japan was not easy for him, and all of a sudden, and kind of ironically, it looked easy for Pecco.
Yeah, I mean, the whole world is just losing their mind over what happened with Pecco, that he rode someone else's bike, that they've changed his spec, that the ride height device lockdown is different from one year. I don't know. And some of the conjecture doesn't make any sense given how the rules work. So, did Pecco just get his thoughts organized? I think something physical, something mechanical has occurred. And the test the week after the previous round, I think they found some things, and he has some different people helping, including Casey Stoner, who I'm a little suspicious about what Casey Stoner brings to the party. I know that is, we're not ever supposed to question that Casey is wonderful in every way.
What are your suspicions? Because I've thoroughly enjoyed the random Casey Stoner wandering around in multiple garages and then being there as like a technical consultant for Pecco.
Well, my memory is, Casey was a bit of a protege with Honda. He was in the right place at the right time with Bridgestone. He is a very gifted rider. He had some health issues that are still somewhat undefined. He was very angry about the way particularly the Spanish media treated him. Now, the Spanish media probably would have treated a Spanish guy the same way, but of course he's very much not Spanish. And this, you could argue at the time the Spanish media had about all of the people from Australia they could stomach. And then he went to Ducati because Honda didn't love him. And then after he quit with Ducati, he kind of got going again with Honda. And then he had a big accident at the 8 Hour, and then he went back to Ducati. And Casey seems to have, in my words, a bit of a chip on his shoulder about not being appreciated. But everybody has to figure out where home base is. And Rossi is struggling with the same problem because he's a spokesman for Yamaha. His team is a Ducati team, which is already this is confusing. Ducati is Audi. races a BMW in endurance, and like the old joke is, what exactly is it that you stand for? And the problem is that, with Rossi, I don't think it's about money. I think he's got sponsorship and he's got what he needs. But the problem is there isn't one manufacturer that's going to link all the different things he does together. The through line isn't solid. So at a certain point, he wants to speak on behalf of Yamaha because he had a lot of success with them, but he wants his MotoGP team to be Ducati because they're the dominant brand. And I think the politics in sports car racing, which I'm certainly not an expert on, it would make a lot more sense for him to be driving an Audi. But I think the specific team that runs his BMW is the team he wants to drive for. So there it's a people situation more than he specifically wants to drive the BMW, which if you watch those races is physically gigantic compared to all the other cars in that class. So a lot going on there, and there's a complicated explanation about Valentino Rossi that doesn't have much to do with Casey Stoner.
No, it is interesting though, and I just saw he entered into the 3-man effort for BMW's Indianapolis run, I believe, as well. That they are piecing together. So, anyways, yeah, it's interesting dynamics, and we circle back to, before we get off of this, just the whole idea of the sports psychology aspect and everything that Mark went through in Japan. The sports psychology of the final round in Pro Superbike. I mean, how do you? There's a billion different directions and elements that went into this. I know because we voiced the races, and people, I believe they're up on YouTube now as well. I was watching one of them the other day just to kind of listen back and see how stupid my voice sounded, and I thoroughly was enamored by the way that the contenders going into Saturday handled that situation and some of the twists and turns that it took. I think we knew, and we've talked about this all year here on the podcast, Colin, that in a 4-round season, everything mattered and it was going to come down and be tight. I'm not sure we could have anticipated how dramatic the actual conclusion of all of this could have been.
Yeah, I don't think we did appreciate it because it all happened quite quickly. There were a lot of moving parts. I'm quite proud of those shows. I watched them on TSN to more as a quality check than specifically to see how I'm doing. But I am concerned that the shows represent well. And it's funny. I think those CTMP races, one of the few times I would have loved to have as much time as MotoGP does, because I know the broadcast team struggles with finding enough things to talk about in the run-up to whatever. But boy, there was a lot of meat on the bone there. And, it also ended so abruptly because that incident with Sam Garand, turn 8, was on the last lap. And it really was the defining moment of the race because whatever was going to happen between Jordan and Ben Young seemed to have been interrupted. And if I were Jordan, I'd probably be a little upset about that because it seemed like Jordan actually had a legitimate shot at winning that race, which would have been just an incredible story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that Alex Dumas wound up on the podium after all that, and the crowd's chanting his name. And I mean, a lot of really bizarre things happened.
And perhaps because of the way that this year began, right, with Ben jumping onto the Honda and Alex going over to the Economy Lube BMW team, this was set up to have kind of this chaotic relationship between Garand and Dumas being on the BMW, and then also having the connection of Scott Miller and what he was doing for both sides of that, and then having Ben and trying to feel out his bike throughout the season and kind of chipping away, but not winning very many races, or at least what he was used to the last couple of years on the BMW. Is there one element that sticks out for you more than any other from the 4th and final round, where you kind of look back at it now? As unfortunately, we're recording this later than we usually would, but it's like a month separation essentially, and you're looking back at it and going, I can't believe blank happened. Like, because for me, it's not even like the big picture of like, I can't believe Ben won no, Ben was in contention the whole time. Like, Ben was right there, and it's amazing that he was able to accomplish doing another championship and winning the Canada Cup and all the rest. But for me, it's almost like there's Jordan being in contention, as you say. There's Alex fighting his way back against unforeseen events. It's the way that Garand was so smooth and so successful and fought his way right back onto the edge of being there at the end of the season, only to have everything fall apart in the final race. So is there anything for you that jumps out?
I think it's the fact that, if you watch all the video, you certainly see Ben Young conduct a few adventures, which to me indicated how hard he was riding. And Ben Young making mistakes that you notice is unusual. But he was pretty much flawless at CTMP, and he needed to be, and there was a lot of pressure. I think all three of them were under a lot of pressure, and they handled it differently. I think it's easy to miss in all of this that the dominant performer, the top gun of the year, was Sam Garant. He was the guy who won the most races, and I was fascinated to see that his data guy is the data guy who just won the Moto America Championship, which, by the way, is very significant because BMW had never won that title.
Wow. I didn't realize that. Also, that the Moto America side of things will obviously lead us into a little conversation about Pro Supersport coming up in a second. But the way that Sam fought back in to this chase, and then seeing the way that he was injured at the end of the season, for me, is one of the more interesting and tragic story arcs, I think, that in sport, like literally from sports that I've just been there in person and been covering. I hope that we see Sam back and battling again in and around, but there obviously have been rumors and ideas that, hey, he might not be back into the paddock next year. What kind of a loss do you think that would be if Garant is not part of Pro Superbike and CSBK in 2026?
Well, it's a gigantic loss for a number of reasons. Firstly, for the reason I've already mentioned, which is that he was the most successful rider, and that was a bit of a surprise. Nature abhors a vacuum. I've been through this so many times over the years. The series won't be as good. It won't be this. It won't be that. I am not as worried about that. I was talking to a few people earlier in the week, and it looks like Van Winkle is probably going to move to Superbike on a Honda, and that doesn't mean his Honda will be as good as Ben Young's. But you throw a Torin Collins type guy in there. Collins didn't race Superbike regularly this season. Van Winkle in Superbike, there's a top 5 guy for sure, and at some tracks maybe a little bit more than that. And more than anything, very aggressive guy, confident guy, and I mean, partly his reputation has been burnished by Collins having so much respect for him. And Collins, wasn't racing Superbike, and certainly Ben Young and Torin Collins, in terms of personality, don't have much in common. But I don't think too many people would argue that they were clearly the top guys, and the people who won those 2 titles, the most important pro titles in the series, are deserving champions.
Yeah. Van Winkle, by the way, very active on social media. On top of having a fantastic year in Pro Supersport, the way that he has been in between rounds pushing on that Honda, it's been pretty obvious that he's been working and trying to find a groove with it and all the rest out west. I have a ton of respect, and this is, again, very off topic, but I have so much respect for his work ethic and the way that he appears to just be, like, he's a grinder. Him and his dad, Jim, are like, they love doing this stuff and doing it the right way and what they deem to be, hey, let's get out. And but again, it's kind of the Western contingent, whether it's Torin or Philip de Gama Blanchette and his dad, and you see these almost like little hives within CSBK of people who, I mean, I would put like Cole Alexander right there as well, right? As somebody who is just like, he's doing SOAR stuff in between rounds. And David McKay, we need to give a shout out to, because going undefeated in SOAR throughout 2025 on his Honda, the way that those guys work at it, I think, is inspirational too. And this is why I said it was off topic. Somebody like a Lincoln Scott, who we've seen in Mini GP, and I follow Lincoln on Instagram, and I love the updates that come out from that. And he's over in Italy doing stuff, and like had a really hard weekend this past weekend, battles through injury, gets his first pole position, all the rest in qualifying. Like there are elements of this where it's being handed down. You've seen it a lot longer than I have, Colin, but to go from one generation to the next generation and to see how you do this stuff properly. And I feel like Van Winkle is a great example of that, even though he's still stupid young. Like he handles his business and he has this maturity about him, especially when he's on the bike, maybe outside of Shubenacadie turn 2, turn 3. But he he has this maturity about him where he knows where to punch and when to sit back and when to, and I mean, that type of racecraft, I think, does lean itself to him having success in Superbike.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning Lincoln Scott, because he obviously came out of Tony Sharpless's development series with the Ovales, and I'm a part of that. Yep. and certainly have worked with him and his family. And it's good to see them getting somewhere in Europe because it's very difficult. But it's interesting when you look at those three Western guys we reference, all of those guys were mini bike racers out West, and they just slightly predate the new emphasis on mini bikes. And to the point that when I first met Van Winkle, it was at Greg Moore in British Columbia at the track, and he and his dad were helping out at one of the first, actually it was the very first mini GP race we ever had, and they were former, major players in that series. So it's interesting, would Van Winkle be further ahead if he'd had a little bit of a push a year earlier? We'll never know because that's not how it happened. And also, obviously, he's physically a very large person. So I'd imagine 4 or 5 years ago, he probably was pretty big then too. So probably not ideal. And one of the things about Lincoln Scott and Ethan Reardon, to pick one of the current guys, is it's, Reardon's only 10. You have to be between 10 and 14 to go to the World Championships. But to be physically smaller and lighter is a huge advantage.
Well, that's Ben Young telling me, I think actually both of us, when he was at Daytona, he's like, yeah, I got stuck behind a couple of Ducati jockeys because he was stuck in with Kaylee Yakov and PJ Jacobson. And I was like, yeah, that seems not fun to just like be stuck between that and the horsepower and all the rest of the Ducati stuff. But also, again, just totally off topic, but Jacobson announcing that he is going up and doing Superbike stuff for the Rahal Ducati Moto team, and Matthew Skoltz announcing after he's at New Jersey Motorsport Park in the final round of Moto America, he's going up. I'm like, I'm glad those two get to continue to spar with each other at all costs because that's
I think a couple of things. One, you get them out of Supersport, right? It's a development class, so let's see some other faces. Not that I don't appreciate them. Schultz is interesting because he was very good on a Superbike. I've been at a couple of Superbike races in the States that he's won. I think they were both in the rain, but he will be fine on a Superbike. I don't mean he's going to win, and obviously it's very competitive down there. But of course, if you're following all of this closely, Razgatlioglu actually went to COTA and tested just after the Moto America round on a super stock bike and went faster than pole position would have been in Superbike. So it kind of emphasized how competitive the Moto America series is in terms of lap times. But if you want to confirm that Razgatlioglu is significantly better than most motorcycle racers, well, now he's conveniently headed to the United States to embarrass those guys too.
That's amazing. Okay, so this is our next.
And also think about this BMW and Alpha Technic helping him to do that, to learn a track that the next time he rides there will not be on a BMW, it will be on a Yamaha.
Yeah, there's so many interesting elements of that. Obviously, the Yamaha stuff in MotoGP as well, where it's like you're developing a V4 in this CC and a V4 in that CC and an inline 4 in this CC, and it's like, oof. And I saw the quote from Fabio as well the other day, just saying, yeah, we'll see what happens because I might be interested in going to a satellite team. I think we deserve a factory team, but we'll find out down the road, kind of thing. I was like, that's throwing a little bit of chum in the water, maybe. But all right, so because we brought up Moto America, that's my natural transition point to talking about Torin Collins, because he obviously has been a mainstay in that super sport class, and Torin going last lap for the championship, overtake, throwing it. The more that I've seen that pass at CTMP, the more I realize he just chucked it down the inside. And I think we all knew he was going to. I was there on the Saturday, and I actually walked past somebody who was saying, "Hey, do you know who this kid?" And he was pointing at his bike, and I said, "Have you seen him race before?" And he goes, "No, who is he?" And I said, just wait for the final corner on the last lap, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if he's going to be in fourth and in the draft, and he's going to have to chuck it down inside on the Ducati he switched over to from his usual ride in the Suzuki. But I'm like, something will happen with him at the end of the race. And sure enough, you're standing there at the Canadian Tire Bridge and watching them fly down the Andretti Straight, and you go, yep, here it comes. And then I didn't see the actual pass until we called it on TSN. And sure enough, it was exactly what I thought it was going to look like.
And when full respect to Tremblay on Sunday when the race was shortened and he won, and obviously the other guys all said we had a plan, and they all did have a plan, and it's like, we joke about Mike Tyson, I think, says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. But what I saw on the podium was the relief on Tremblay's face that race was complete and he didn't have to deal with whatever Torin Collins had up his sleeve. Because at that point, I'm sure Tremblay was worried that Collins wouldn't try it in turn 10. He'd try it somewhere else because everyone was expecting another turn 10. And, the number of fumbled overtakes in turn 10 for the lead or for position of importance over the history of the series, it's become standard. And we've had it where like 3 guys have all been pushed wide and the 4th guy has wound up winning. And we've had, lots of people running into each other on the run to the flag. And, it's not even a maybe anymore. And it's funny because NASCAR, when they race at Mossport, are famous for having these gigantic collisions in the last turn and, running along the guardrail underneath the checkered flag and stuff like that. But we're not far away.
Well, it makes me think about when we switched, on the TSN broadcast from kind of the high overhead view, which I believe is you, yes, Colin, from the tower there looking down at that final corner pass. And so you make, pass goes through, and then it's a race to the line. Then all of a sudden, was it Cassis that came by as well? Or I'm trying to remember off of, that stole that extra spot. And then we cut to the end shot, and it's just Van Winkle into the hay bales, right? Like at the background of it, and you're like, well, that wasn't necessarily involved with all of this craziness at the front, but that front pack, it was amazing to see lap after lap after lap after lap. And even, I believe on the TSN broadcast, we had an interview with Torin Collins' dad, Rupert, where he said, I don't think he can break the draft, as it stands right now, but this group is going to be together until the very end. And the way that laid itself out, I think we knew there was going to be some chaos at the end. And as you say, like that track with that rider on that bike, it was an equation that led to what we saw. And Torin obviously goes on to win the Pro Supersport Championship.
Well, it's funny because, we don't have a lot of smack talk, and it's not easy to get any smack talk out of these guys. And Collins is our smack talker, but not an American sport level of smack talk. And he's engaged slightly with Tremblay and maybe a little more with Cassis. And, when Cassis was coming back, he said, well, of course, I'm going to go after Collins. He's the top dog in the class. And Collins read that. And, of course, I was happy he did because I'm the one who wrote it. But having said that, that they wound up together, Collins and Cassis, is really good. And like I said, the relief on Tremblay's face, it was nice that after pretty horrible season for Tremblay, where he really didn't get to show much of what he's capable of. And not as bad as Elliot Vieira, who basically didn't show anything of what he's capable of. So it was good to see some of the usual suspects have a little bit of luck. I mean, other people, you felt bad for because of clutch problems and injuries from Edmonton. And, several of our climbing the ladder guys didn't have a strong finish to the season the way you'd like to, but hopefully those people can persist. And some of them were at Shannonville at the last regional at the start of September, and that was an interesting race because the top guns weren't there, but a lot of the other people were there, and were riding very well. And Simpson continues to show well, so it'll be interesting to see who can carry some momentum forward. And of course, like Alex Michel, what's he going to be riding next year, right?
Yeah, great question. But also, like the fact that Matt Simpson has been able to come back from round one and have the positive push that he's had through the remainder of the season is pretty amazing to see. Elliot Vieira, by the way, no podiums in Bridgestone CSBK in Pro Supersport in 2025, which you could argue is as big a surprise as anything based on the form that he's shown in the previous years. But again, getting bumped by people like Van Winkle, who end up on the podium 4 different times, right? Or Sebastian Tremblay having a difficult year where he only wins the final race, never finishes higher than 3rd, like at any point in the remainder of the season as well. And a big part of that, again, we go back to is outside of Torin Collins not finishing race 1 in round 2 at Atlantic Motorsport Park, he ends up winning 5 of the first 6 races with that one DNF and goes on from there to win the championship with that last lap, last corner pass in round 4. If we had like a 6-round season, like when do you, like, would this have been like a Marquez-esque Torin Collins, hey, this thing is done by round 4 and now we're all playing around kind of thing? Because there was enough infighting from 2 to 3 to 4 that I wonder how early it would have been different.
I mean, if we'd had more weekends, I think Superbike would have still come down to the very end of the last race. But if we'd had more weekends, it's funny, Collins hasn't had that breakthrough in the States. We talk a lot about rising stars. And for the rising stars in Canada who are frustrated that they're due a breakthrough, look at Collins in the States, right? He just hasn't had that one race that attracts the attention. But I think to myself, if a team's looking at him, this is a guy who's won a championship now, who's controlled a series, and not many people ever get the chance to develop that skill. And Collins mentioned it at CTMP, right? That he's not used to leading champion. Well, first it was, I'm not used to being on pole. I'm not used to leading. There's a whole string of them. And he was right, but it's hard to feel sorry for him when he has the kind of ultimate pace that he's shown pretty regularly. And even, in New Jersey, things didn't go great for him. I think he was 10th on Sunday. And I know they've had some issues with the bike. And it's just frustrating because, we would like to see a podium, probably down there for him. And that's probably next year now. And hopefully there's some decent opportunities for him down there. And I heard that he rode the R9 finally, which his team does run some of those. And I heard that it went well and he liked it. I'm sure I'm not supposed to be repeating any of this, but I don't know what will happen with him in Canada, but I know he would be inclined to try and ride the same bike in Canada that he races in the States.
Which is interesting because of the situation with the R9 in Canada, right? More than anything else is okay. So if there's one guy, and maximum respect to Brad McRae and Tommy Cassis, who's Yamaha adjacent, all these different things, but if there's one guy that Yamaha Canada really wanted to put in front of everything, it might be good for Yamaha Canada to get in the year of Torin Collins in his camp and say, well, if you guys have any interest in doing that in Moto America, like we might be able to facilitate that here, no?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times riders feel associated with the brand for all kinds of different reasons. Sometimes it's just that they have a dealer who's really strong for them. But Collins is not particularly affiliated with anybody, and he switched from Suzuki to Ducati at the last round and did well to switch, and that worked better than a lot of us were worried it might. So we'll see. I mean, if you throw Collins into Supersport in Canada on a Yamaha triple, I think he's immediately the favorite, particularly if he's racing in the States and has access to the stuff he needs.
Are we looking at it?
Racing in R9 in the States.
Yeah. I was gonna say, are we looking at a like a Pramac situation here, to use a MotoGP analysis, where all of a sudden it's economy lube Yamaha?
Well, I mean, out of your mouth into.
This is, I guess the question.
We'll probably see most of these people at the Hall of Fame event at the end of the month, so yes. I'll ask them if they picked up on your suggestion.
Which I would love for you to promote, because you've done great work trying to build this up and do more than just your small part in order to make this a successful event moving forward. Which also blows my mind. It happens to be about 7 minutes from where I live, so I'll see you down the street.
Yeah, but you have football.
I mean, football is football. I can always work around that. It's fine. It's just a stick and ball stuff.
Kind of hard to be speaking in two places at the same time.
I will do my best, regardless. But yes, promote what is happening here coming up at the end of the month.
So quite near where you are based is the Canadian Warplane Heritage, which is at the International Airport for Hamilton, which is Mount Hope on the escarpment. And it's a banquet facility there. You can rent it, and the Hall of Fame are having their event there. And we've been pushing that partly because a number of the people who've either been in our paddock or are part of our paddock. So we have Rob Egan from Brooklyn Cycle Racing. We have Frank Wood, an announcer. We have Scott Miller, who's Fast Company, Dumas builder, Shannonville Motorsport Park, and Doug Lawrence, who raced flat track forever, still races flat track, organizes flat track, but was part of the CSBK paddock, both as a winning amateur and a Suzuki rider in the pro division. So there's a number of people affiliated with CSBK that are involved in the hall this year. So we've been trying to, pump their tires or, shine their halos or whatever metaphor you want to use. And at the end of the month, I think it's Saturday the 25th is the event for the Hall of Fame at the Warplane Heritage in Mount Hope. And looking forward to hearing what those people have to say and having some fun and eating some rubber chicken or the equivalent.
There you go, yeah, and just celebrate the sport at large. I think is the big thing, right? There's lots of people that'll be in town and that will be attending it that care deeply about all things two wheels, which is fantastic. So, we had that reception and kind of little presser and all the rest that was at the fourth and final round of Bridgestone CSBK this season, and it seemed like people were genuinely excited to just kind of be around each other and to get to experience and tell some stories and all that good stuff.
Well, the Hall of Fame maybe doesn't get the attention it deserves, and it's in Canada. We don't seem to have much in the way of unifying themes the way they typically are so good at in the States. So whether it's the various sanctioning groups or the CSBK National Series or Vintage or the Motorcycle Film Festival this weekend, ideally all of these different things would promote each other, right? Because it's the same core group of enthusiasts who are interested in these things. And I think the Hall of Fame, and it was partly due to COVID, has kind of drifted away a little bit. So I would like to see it become a more regular part of the conversation. And I think part of it is a lot of people, think, oh, the Hall of Fame must be, 12 people staring into space with a cheese platter. And when you go to it, it's 250 people. And I'm sure there are cheese platters, but
But I would also say that that's very similar to anybody who has ever, if you're listening to this and you stumbled into us and you've only gone to a bike meetup or a moto social or this, it's like you think, oh, there's going to be 5 bikes there, and you get there and there's 200. And you're like, this is fun. There's a lot of people that I've met that are personal example for me. I called a game for the CFL last week in Vermont. I went down, in Montreal. I went down to Vermont with my son because it was his 5th birthday and he just wanted to go fishing. So took him down there, and on our way to Bartlett Falls, which is a place that we love going to, ended up finding, there's everybody's out riding. It's a beautiful, sunny, nice blue sky afternoon. We're on the Lincoln Gap, and at the top of the hill, there's just a ton of friendly people, and they're all pulling up on bikes, and they're all hanging out and having fun. It's like that's kind of the whole thing, is like the social community of this is what the Hall of Fame should and will be about, thanks to people like you trying to promote it, like on this platform.
And it is fun. I mean, it is the world of the gearheads, but that's what we all are. And I think we've moved past being embarrassed about being a gearhead. It's just your calling.
Awesome. Good stuff, Colin. We are all out of time, but hopefully we'll be back with more conversation about all things Bridgestone CSBK, MotoGP, World Superbike, Top Rack off-season stuff. We'll talk liveries, in the as we all have to do in the off-season, because I know Colin loves how much people dress up their bikes. But we'll get into that. But thank you so much to everybody listening. Sorry we took so long to get a hold of me so that we could actually put this together.
And we'll do something from Valencia, because I'll be
Yes.
there for the Mini GP Worlds, and I'm going to stick around and go to the MotoGP postseason test.
Amazing. Sounds great. All right. That is going to do it for us here on the Canadian Superbike podcast. Thank you to everybody for listening. Thanks to Colin, as always, for all of